Hello and welcome to the build video for the Wave, a 3D printed sculpture of mine. Alright, so I'm going to jump right in here. We're going to start off with tools and materials needed. You're going to need some medium to thick viscosity CA, a Sharpie, an X-Acto tool or other similar sharp blade, some sandpaper, a screwdriver, some small pointed tip screws about a centimeter in overall length, some fishing line, and some wire, some straight wire that's about 1/16 inch diameter. I got this from a survey flag, the little survey flags that you can find at just about any hardware store. Alrighty, so I'm gonna start off by saying that the first thing you need to do is make sure that all of your parts fit nicely together. There are a bunch of joints here. Some of them need to be rigid and at 90 degrees, and other ones need to rotate freely. So for example, you got your vertical supports here that fit into the base, and you've got that hole and that hole. You just want to make sure that those parts snugly fit and form a nice 90-degree joint. So once you go through and you make sure that all of your joints are good and they all fit nicely, we're going to go ahead and start off with the main shaft. So let me clear. We're going to start off with the main shaft that creates the nice wave effect with all of these offsets. You've got this piece right here. You can see we'll definitely have all the STLs posted. You've got these little offsets with the dots. The dots are for alignment purposes to get a nice consistency out of your wave. You can see that I have gone in and I have marked with Sharpie every other one, and that's going to be for alignment purposes. You'll understand more about that later on. And then you've got the main shaft. I printed this vertically with no support material. I'm actually pretty pleased with how it came out on my setup. So, a quick note on this, you're gonna, at least with my setup and my resolution, I'm gonna go ahead and go through this, and I'm gonna sand all of this down to make sure that I can evenly fit it and rotate it within this piece. It should be able to clearly rotate within this piece. Slips nice and easily in and out. You can rotate it nicely. It's the first goal. And then second off, this is probably the most difficult part of this build. You should have 10 of these. And they're all exactly the same. They're all marked out the exact same. And you've also got 10 spaces in between those little forks that hold up the shaft. I'm going to go ahead and insert the shaft with these in place, like so. See how that works? And the critical part here is you're going to want to have those black alignment dots facing the outside, or it doesn't really matter at this point, but they all need to be facing in the same direction. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And that is the so far completed wave shaft. The next step is going to be to align and set all of these individual little offsets to these black dots. So what you're gonna do is offset each dot. So as you can see, there's a white dot on top, and then there's a black dot, a white dot, a black dot, a white dot, a black dot. And you're gonna go down the line and carefully lay that out. So I went ahead and I went in, and as you can see, those little holes that are at the bottom of each one of these offsets, those little holes, I went in and I put a small drop of CA in each one of them and let it run down to the bottom to get these points asphyxiated on that shaft so that they rotate all on the shaft and stay in the correct orientation. So I used those alignment dots that I was talking about earlier to align those in a nice offset. So basically what I did is set that one to black, the next one was white, the next one was black, the next one was white, etc., etc., until I had all 10 dots lined up to complete this. So now that that is out of the way, that's probably the hardest part of this build. So the hinge is pretty simple. We've got these little square brackets. Now it's important to pay attention spacing wise on these. It might be kind of hard to tell, but if you look, there are gaps that are bigger than others. Every other gap should be slightly bigger, as you can see. And now if you take this and you line it up with that, you can see what I'm talking about as far as those gaps are concerned. You can also judge it by this piece. So each one of those little gaps would correspond to one of those. It's important to get this part right because the gaps are minimal, but you have to take good note to that. You want the larger gaps. There should be 10 total larger gaps that you're going to do the hinge with. So I'm going to lay that part right there. Get out my hinges. So these are the 10 little arms that will be manipulating our strings. We got 10 of those. And then we also have this piece of wire, and this piece of wire is perfectly straight. I got it from a survey flag, which starts off straight to begin with, and I bent it at a 90-degree and made it just about the length of this piece, and you can see the 90-degree there to prevent it from going through the hole. So now I'm going to just go through a quick assembly process on this. You're going to want to make sure that all of your little hooks are all facing the same direction in your piece. So I'm going to go ahead and assemble this. Might be a little tricky, but it's doable. I'm going to carefully align up my holes. You can see. And then we're going to go to the second. We're going to skip one gap. Larger gap, smaller gap. Larger gap, smaller gap. So we're going to skip one and we're going to go into the next, keeping those little prongs, those little hooks at the end of these all in the same orientation. You can see how that assembly goes together. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a small drop of CA and I'm going to put it right on the end of that 90-degree bend that I did in the wire. I'm just going to glue that right in place right there. So just a small little drop right on top. Can kind of swirl it around a little bit and then just let it go ahead and set. So now that we have all the little individual components assembled and ready for main assembly, we're going to go ahead and you're going to just have to kind of watch this carefully. We're going to take one of our supports here and you're going to put this piece with the little cylinders, you're going to put that opposite of this triangle part right here, because this is the back of the ensemble. So as you can see those little square parts right there, that guy goes into there, and you want to make sure that that joint is nice and flush, nice and square. Second, you're gonna take your little hinge ensemble here. Make sure those are all in the same direction. And that's gonna go opposite of the cylinders. Like so. So you've got cylinders on the outside and you've got hinges on the side with the triangle. Next step is going to be to put this shaft in. As you can see, the whole of it goes in the top, and then we've got that other little piece that aligns in. Like so. And then you're gonna go ahead and just slap the second piece on the other side. So now it's time to asphyxiate our little actuating deal upon the base. So we're simply just gonna line it up with its holes and give it a nice firm press in place on both ends. And it should fit in there quite snugly. And you want to make sure that the back, those white parts, are nice and flush. This guy needs a little more. You can pull and press and pry until everything is quite in your liking. If you want, you can go ahead and add some dabs of CA to these joints. Just time to do the bearings. As you can see, I have one final one done here. So basically all this is a little ring of plastic that I printed. It's got a little eyelet at the top, and it should fit if you have 1/2 inch ball bearings, 1/2 inch diameter, not radius, obviously. It should fit just snugly right around the midpoint. It should literally, the friction fit is minimal, but it is there nonetheless. It should just practically want to keep itself in place there right at the midpoint. So this is pretty good of a fit, but it requires a small drop of CA in there to completely hold it. So what I do is just take a small drop of our CA, and we're just gonna place a tad little drop in between the bearing and the plastic. Let's see if I can get that in front. So once you've got that little dab, it really doesn't need to be much. Really, I usually even take a little piece of paper and go along, wipe off any excess. And then you're just gonna wanna let that sit until the CA fully dries. So now I'm just going to go through and repeat that process for all 10 ball bearings. Alright, so now we have all of our ball bearings in their little seats, and we've got the fishing line here. And it's time to attach the little ball bearings to each one of our little arms here. Now the important thing about this is you want to make sure that it's as consistent as possible. You want every piece of fishing line to be as exact as possible, and I know that may be hard while tying knots and such, but just do your best, as I'm about to. So take out our measuring stick here, and we'll see that we need about roughly about 4.5 inches of fishing line per each go. So I'm going to start off by marking out and cutting 10 sections of our fishing line here into 4.5 inch sections. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Alright, so as you can see, I tied all the ball bearings to their little bits of fishing line, and then I ran them up through and affixated them to the top throw arms that are mounted on the back of the hinge. So I've saved the last one to do for the demonstration of this video. All I did was go through and put a small drop of CA right on the little hinge. And then I ran the little thread up through the cylinder. And then carefully held it in place, and keeping in mind its orientation to the rest of the wave. And then you just gotta hold it there until the glue dries. Like so.